worry about that.
Yeah. Oh, it is that. Yeah, this way. You're out.
Commissioner, Scott said that he thought it was 3:30. He's on his way. He's the accountant.
Where we're at.
He keeps the record.
Yeah. I thought your taxes were 2,000. But it's 5,000.
So it's a simple
Thomas
business.
Building B.
Yeah, so things happen. So this is called the script.
Well, let's let them figure that out for themselves.
In television terms, you do this.
It's like an IQ
Is that
test.
the signal?
But I do think we should adopt the Lee County so we don't have so much destruction. They do this instead of clapping. When somebody's happy about something, you see all these hands go up. And I first thought they were doing like duck call.
Yeah.
But it's their silence.
Silence.
And they also have 3 minutes, and then they get to go like this. They have all these funny hand gestures.
To the chair, it's actually 3 o'clock if you did want to get started.
Yes, I did. All right. Go ahead and call to order the special call meeting Monday, October 27, 2014 of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this point, I'd like to invite Commissioner Wesley Davis, the Vice Chair, to lead the invocation, followed by Commissioner Joseph Fletcher leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise?
Please bow your head. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to discuss this important topic here today. May we use your guidance, your knowledge, and your wisdom in what we decide here today. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Please join with me in the pledge of allegiance to the greatest nation on earth.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Under the county attorney items is the reason for the special call meeting, an update on the status of the Vero Beach rate reduction efforts, and the October 28, 2014 joint public meeting. Before I ask Dylan to take over, I just want to point out to the commission what I wanted to do here today was just, there's been some kind of developments in the last week. Last Tuesday, the city's special counsel, Mr. Wright, presented some rate reduction proposals to the city of Vero Beach, and I wanted to make sure this commission was up to date and all on the same page regarding those rate reduction efforts. In your backup, you should have at least 4 things that I think are important for us to talk about. The first is a October 22nd email from Dylan Reingold, just reiterating the county's position that we have expressed publicly in the 2 previous staff level mediation meetings. You should then have the document that Mr. Wright presented to the City of Vero Beach. The memo is titled The Status of Vero Beach Rate Reduction Efforts. Also, Mr. Reingold had sent an email to Mr. Wright requesting some clarifications, and Mr. Wright's response to that email should be in your backup as well. And finally, this morning, the town of Indian River Shores Mayor Brian Barefoot posted a statement on their website regarding the proposed rate reductions. As you all are probably very aware, we've had the 2 staff level mediation meetings, and at the first meeting, the county was represented by County Administrator Joe Baird, County Attorney Dylan Reingold, and the County Special Counsel Floyd Self. At the second meeting, Mr. Self and Mr. Baird were there. Mr. Reingold could not attend. But at both those meetings, the county made our position very clear, and just to kind of kick this off, I'd like to reiterate what we have presented at these meetings. And the first point is that the board has consistently felt that the best outcome for all residents of both the city, the town, and Indian River County would be a full and complete sale of the City of Vero Beach electric utility to FP&L. I think this board has been very consistent that that's our #1 priority, and we have reiterated that several times. In the event that a sale cannot be completed, however, we've asked the City of Vero Beach to provide three options after that. One is a rate substantially similar to those of currently the FPL rate, the cessation of the subsidy of the City of Vero Beach General Fund by the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility, and the formation of an electric utility that is controlled by a governing board that fairly and proportionally represents the geographic makeup of the City of Vero Beach electric utility customer base. So those are the positions the county has presented at the two previous meetings. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Reingold to walk us through the city's proposed rate reduction. And Mr. Dillon, or Mr. Reingold,
That's fine. I've gone by Mr. Dillon before. Thank you to the chair and to the folks here in the audience today. And first off, I just want to at least state that we have with me Floyd Self. Mr. Self is our outside consultant, or counsel. He works with Gonzalez, Saggio, and Harlan LLP in Tallahassee. He's been very helpful both on this item and our PSC petition. So I thank Floyd for being here today, being with us tomorrow, and also helping us all through this process. I attended the City of Vero Beach City Council meeting on October 21st, and at that meeting, the council for the City of Vero Beach, Shep Wright, had announced that there was a tentative agreement with regards to the OUC contract and a possible amendment to be proposed both to OUC and to the City Council. And essentially some of the key terms of this deal were as follows. There would be a decrease in the capacity payments. It would be approximately $7 million from the outset, or at least when this amendment kicks in, and that would be for the first 3 years. After that, the decrease would be roughly between $4.1 million and $5.3 million a year for the remainder of the term, which runs through 2029. Additionally, the city would purchase 54 megawatts of peak power from OUC, and this would enable the City of Vero Beach to close and shut down Big Blue. There also is a provision that there be a minimum take of base capacity of 85 megawatts by the City of Vero Beach. And the OUC would have several other provisions in its favor. They would have the right to have the option to terminate, which I don't believe could happen before 2020. They would also have the option to acquire the rights to the St. Lucie power or project power. And finally, they would have a permanent right to the gas transmission rights under the PPA. So those are some of the takeaway points that I listened to or heard at the City Council meeting. It's also what has been identified in Mr. Wright's memo. It appears to me that there's a short-term decrease in the rates from what they described as $123 and I believe 93 cents. 1,000 kilowatt hours drop about $10 per 1,000 kilowatt hour down to 113.93. That still compares to FPL's rate, which is roughly in the $99 range. But to offset this, it seemed in my mind that this was kind of like an adjustable rate mortgage in which you kind of had a low rate or an apparent low rate at the beginning, but you kind of have this unknown out there hanging out there over you for the rest of the term. And thus I followed up with, as Commissioner O'Brien talked about, an email to Shep Wright saying, well, can you describe to me or explain to me what you anticipate as your rate structure in the event that OUC takes advantage of all these rights and options they have under the contract and under the amendment. Shep Wright essentially said back to me, Dylan, we can't really calculate that. There are too many unknowns, too many variables. I can't give you that information. So that certainly caused me a little bit of heartburn or pause when that was the information provided back by the attorney for the City of Vero Beach. So at least I wanted the board to kind of understand the proposal as best as I know it, and also just sort of the unknowns that go forward, and that's identified in Shep Wright's email. Other issues that I want to make sure I mention, and certainly Councilmember Kramer's in the audience, and he can correct me if I'm wrong on this issue, is that some of the things I want you to understand going into the meeting tomorrow that you may hear. I've attended several City Council meetings, and I just didn't want to catch my board off guard as to some of the concepts you may hear from the city. One of the comments I heard from Mayor Winger was that the money will not stop flowing from the electric utility to the general fund. He was just not willing to impose these draconian measures upon the citizens of Vero Beach. He explained there were significant tax rate increases and/or electric rate increases that would need to be imposed in the event that happened. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I just watched the October 21st video again, but it had not been posted by this morning. Another concept that's been talked about is that there have been some complaints that why did it take them so long from the city standpoint to start examining rate reduction measures or rate reduction options. As I heard at the meetings, it was, well, the first thing we did was we were working with FMPA to try to renegotiate that deal in the spring. When that fell apart, we then need to turn to FPL and get FPL's permission to start negotiating with OUC as to whether, what options we had, because obviously the city doesn't want to violate its current contract obligations with FPL. And then once they were essentially okay to move forward, these are the result of those ongoing negotiations. Some of the other issues I've heard is there will be other benefits or at least rate reduction measures that are being examined right now, and that you've got a rate study and an optimization study which they anticipate being available and ready March, April timeframe and May, June timeframe. Heard from them that the sale isn't going anywhere. The sale's on the back burner. I know that was a statement made by Shep Wright at the August 21st conflict assessment meeting, and it's certainly something that's been reiterated at the various city council meetings that I've attended. And finally, a comment that I thought was interesting was that Mayor Winger made the point, and he's not necessarily wrong on it, is that as he talked to the audience, he said, look, you have to understand that we have been bound by the agreements that the prior councils have made. I can't get out of them. We are stuck with these, and you have to just understand those decisions that were made. Which then brought me back to just the original question again, which was, Chef Wright, can you explain to me what the issues are or the long-term ramifications of this proposal is? And the answer was, I cannot do that. Now, one of the things I anticipate tomorrow being raised is Mr. Reingold, or not to Mr. Reingold, but to the board is, you've complained about rates, you and the town both have. We're trying to do our best we can to present that to you. Stop beating us up because we presented this to you. I think more importantly, on the other hand, the question really is back to the council is, do you fully understand the trade-offs and negotiations that have been made with OUC with respect to this deal? And I believe I'm echoing what Councilmember Turner talked about this meeting, which was when she asked Chef Wright, come back to us, explain better the ramifications and the cost scenarios and the like. So that was just sort of some of the comments I've heard from the city council or at the city council meetings. You will hear additional comments. Going forward in terms of the process, we've got our joint public meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at the Indian River State College, Richardson Center, 9 a.m. This board is to consider and seek, if they can, agreement on the issues that we've talked about all along. You have an agenda, hopefully, that's been provided to you already, but generally the format will be your traditional opening. We'll have invocation, roll call, pledge. At that point, we'll have about an hour of public comments for folks who have attended, and that will lead then to 15-minute presentations by the town manager, our commissioner chair, Peter O'Brien, and then to Mayor Winger to present his side of the story and the assessment. There'll be a short break, and there'll be a discussion open up to all of the council members, commissioners, and commissioners to discuss the issues. If we're able to make some progress or we come to an agreement, certainly we can explore that. But if the event we are not able to come to, or at least this board is unable to with the town council and the city council come to agreement, we'll then briefly discuss the mediation process. Essentially under the statute, if the first two stages break down, then you move to mediation. That the parties have roughly 14 days under the statute to come agree to a mediator. If they cannot, they have an additional 7 days to work with a board or group that has mediators to get a name, and then they have 14 days after that to have the mediation. So you're looking at probably the beginning of December, first week of December, to have a mediation. Under the statute, the conflicting governmental entities have the right to extend deadlines for the process. Just in terms of just logistics tomorrow, Leona who is with us today. She will be providing the audio recording and the minutes for the meeting. The town will be providing the tent cards for all of the officials and the various attorneys representing the sides. Adam is working with us to provide the video recording, although it won't be instant. We will have it available. It's my understanding Indian River Shores did not opt into whatever refreshment package is available at IRSC, and so I encourage you to bring your own bottles of water. I've been told that are helpful. So other than that, it's important to realize that we are in the conflict assessment process requiring good faith negotiations. I know this board has been acting in good faith all along, but I just want to remind you guys to continue that, act accordingly in good faith through this entire process. And with that, Commissioner, I turn it back over to you if you have any additional questions concerning the process and the depths of the board or what's going into tomorrow.
Thank you, Dylan. I think the process is pretty clearly outlined, but I wanted this discussion with the board to go in a little bit more detail on some of the things Dylan brought up as far as what I perceived is some really serious drawbacks to the rate reduction. And I'm by no means a rate expert, but looking at the tables provided with the proposal, yes, the $7 million discount is there for the first 3 years, but the base rate goes up every year. And so, to me, you're still getting a $7 million discount, but if your base rate goes up, then your net cost is going up every year. And it appears that by 2018, even with the discount, we're going to be right back up to just about where we are now. And by the year 2019, the base rate or the rate will be higher than the current base rate. So this to me is almost kind of like the the introductory low rate, and it's good for 6 months, and then as things work in, it's just going to go up from there. So I don't. And again, I'll clarify, I'm not a rate expert, but just looking at the printed documents, it looks to me that rate can go up and exceed where we are now. So I'm not sure we're getting the long-term rate reduction that we're looking for. I'm very concerned about the option to give OUC the right to take the power output from the St. Lucie plant for a couple reasons. One is City of Vero Beach gets their power from partial investments in 3 power plants, Stanton 1, Stanton 2, and St. Lucie Nuclear. Stanton 1 is by far the most expensive source of power to the city, and they have a fairly significant commitment to the output there compared to the other cities in Stanton 1. Stanton 2 is the second highest output, and again, the city has a pretty fair share of that output. And then the St. Lucie nuclear plant is by far the cheapest entitlement source that the city has. And so if they give away the rights to that output, then the city's remaining entitlements will be the 2 most expensive sources. And that, again, I'm not a rate expert, but if you have 3 sources and you take out the cheapest, your cost can only go up with the 2 remaining sources of power you have. And the other problem with that is it kind of, in my mind, be one thing if the city could kind of get rid of all their obligations, the stranded costs, the long-term debt and everything, if OUC wanted to take that. But it's my understanding that OUC is only going to take the power output on a pass-through cost basis, leaving all of the obligations with the City of Vero Beach and the ratepayers, which I think Mr. Wright made the comment that it could take the city until the end of the century for that to clear up. So my impression of this, and gentlemen, we'll certainly open it up for discussion, but it's almost like they've taken a bad contract and made it worse, in my opinion. And I don't see it as giving us the long-term rate relief that we've requested of the city. I see it making it worse. And I'm disappointed that it still continues, over $4 million of direct transfers to the general fund of the city, and not addressing that issue, which has been a big concern all along, is the taxation without representation portion of this. So I appreciate the city, making an effort to try to find ways to reduce their rates, but I personally don't think doing it at putting the rate holders into greater jeopardy is the best way to go. And so when I read through all this, and the more I read it and talked to Dylan, I just kept getting basically more and more terrified over this thing. And my understanding is it's kind of almost that this offer might be very quickly going to the OUC board for their approval and then coming back to the city to sign, and without really a detailed analysis. And I'm sure Commissioner Slurry will be really wanting to see the numbers on all this potential. There's a lot of talk about because of the peak power purchase of the transmission lines may need to be upgraded, but yet there's no documentation of what that may cost. There's no documentation of how long that will take. There's no documentation of how that will affect the future rates. The email that Dylan sent to Mr. Wright said, well, yeah, we see your proposed rate of $113.93, but the schedule says that rate can go up every year. Could you please calculate what those rates would be based on the existing schedule? And then we asked them to recalculate it based upon, well, what if OUC exercises their right for the St. Lucie power? And Mr. Wright did not respond to either of those requests with numbers. It was just kind of a vague, we don't know yet, we'll have to see, there's a lot of factors, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of this that just really worries me. I'm not sure it's going to get us where we want to be compared to what we've said all along, which is FP&L-like rates, even with the reduction. Even if it stays, I don't think we're going to be there. And certainly it's not ending the transfers to the general fund. So those are the concerns I have. I just wanted us to have a chance to all be on the same page. So with that, commissioners, any comments, questions, discussions? Commissioner Zork.
I've got a couple. In trying to look at how competitive OUC has been in a long-term picture in the city of Vero Beach race, I went back and there's a link on, I think it's actually through an FMPA place where so I printed out the 10-year comparison between OUC, City of Vero Beach, and Florida Power and Light. What's interesting, the city has made some strides in lowering rates, but the problem is they're competing with Florida Power and Light, who's making better strides, converting plants to gas, being more efficient with their delivery of service and the service side. So in 2004, and this is using a 1,000 kilowatt average, they changed to 1,200 kilowatt somewhere between 2004 and 2014. You had about a 20% price spread on an average residential home, and today we're using the August 2014, we're at about 22% price spread. So even the advances the city's made, and this is using just a sample billing rate, not an actual bill. It has residential bill comparisons, OUC municipal average, and then on the next page it has, let's see, residential electric rates compiled by Florida Municipal Power Electric Association, and it has all the members, then it has the private sector providers down at the bottom. There may be other fees that are added over and above that change and make the spread even greater. So if you look at a 10-year average, Florida Power and Light has consistently been the lowest cost provider, with Vero and OUC being obviously considerably higher. One thing that I don't see factored in or been brought up at the October 16th FMPA meeting, there was 3 agenda items that received budget approval costs to raise the cost of power by OUC. And again, as the chairman said, I'm not a rate specialist, but just doing some rough math, it looks like it's something maybe north of a 5% increase that's retroactive back to October 1st, running through the full budget year. And many of you have seen the story and received the notice that FP&L's reductions going into effect in 2015. So if you look at OUC's recent approval through at the FMPA board meeting for their rate change, P&L's reduction, that's just increasing the spread even greater. It's a catch-up game that I don't think the city of Vero and OUC can ever catch up enough to be competitive. And I can't ever picture OUC selling power to an outside person for less than what they sell it to themselves for their customers. So it seems to be maybe artificially low to start off with, but I think after a short period of time, we're back in another long-term bad commitment that unless somebody can show me differently, but I'm just using documents printed off FMPA's site on rate comparison and coming up with these numbers, plus the three items that they voted for at the October 16th meeting, increasing the per cost kilowatt hour for OUC. So and then you combine that with the unanswered questions that Dylan sent to Chef Wright, I think just adds to, I'm not really that comfortable with that proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Zorkin. Since you referenced the data that you had, would you please make sure a copy of that gets to the clerk so that we can make sure it's
Sure, I'll just pull it up.
part of the public record? Commissioner Slaughter, anything? Or?
I'm glad that Commissioner Zork brought up the last FMPA meeting. Because again, it shows two things. One is that while we're talking about price reductions, the price of power to the city is still going up. And that the control of those increases are fully outside of the hands of the city of Vero Beach. Second thing is the difference between Mayor Winger's statement that Randall said about that the money will not stop flowing from the electric to the city of Vero Beach general fund. And that 6% is a very material amount. In Chef's Wright's list of cost reduction members, he talks about reduced general fund transfer and increased city taxes. So evidently, part of the rate reduction that Mr. Wright was talking about is off the table. And Dylan also brought up the idea that we should be acting in good faith, which I think we have. But I frankly question the good faith of the city of Vero Beach when the mayor of the city of Vero Beach is taking off the table the one thing that the city of Vero Beach actually has control over. I mean, if the city of Vero Beach was actually really wanting to reduce rates, the first thing they'd do is get rid of the 6% transfer. They have immediate control over it. They could stop it basically tomorrow. It is taxation without representation. I've said for years it's basically an immoral transfer, putting the burden on the outside customers. And if they don't start with that, I very seriously question the rest of this process. The last thing I'd like to say is that it would be nice to actually have some good numbers in the package. It's a little narrative from the attorney isn't quite as rich and deep as you'd like with something as serious as this. And I'm certainly hoping that the city of Vero Beach wouldn't go forward with this based on the sort of lack of good financial information and structure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Slaughter. Commissioner Fleischer?
Well, I'm sure tomorrow we will receive a little bit more of a passionate delivery, but based on the emails and the information that I received from the attorney that we all shared now in the packet, there's too many variables that are unknown. The only variable that's fixed is the fact that the city will be able to artificially inseminate the tax base to ensure that they do not have to increase taxes. Well, that's all good and fine, but those people who are citizens that are receiving the great benefit of having the Vero Beach Electric as a supplier are also part of that process of artificially inseminating the tax base, which is unfair. It's all been said. So with that, in a private setting, if you were engaging with a bank, you would not dare go any further, not knowing all of the future expenses. Many did with balloon and adjustable mortgages, and they no longer own their homes. So with that, I look forward to
a positive presentation, but I don't believe a positive presentation will make this any more palatable than it already is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. Commissioner Davis?
I guess just looking at this procedurally, let's just suppose that OUC goes ahead and they approve some form of what they have here in the city of Vero Beach, goes ahead with this decommissioning. And then, I mean, what we're talking about here today is just kind of getting our mind wrapped around what we're going to be deciding tomorrow. Is there actually going to be a vote that we're going to say, I move we file an injunction and they move forward with it, or what exactly? I kind of feel, I appreciate this being educational, but I feel like this is just as much strategy as it is anything else, in my opinion, and this normally would take place in the shade.
Well, yeah. Commissioner, my understanding of the process is obviously the town of Indian Shores filed a lawsuit against the city of Vero Beach. Florida law stipulates that there has to be a mediation program, and the lawsuit is technically in abeyance. And my understanding is that legally we could meet in the shade regarding this if we wanted to, because technically there is no lawsuit. But it requires three levels. The first is public meetings at the staff level. We've undergone 2 of those. At the second staff level meeting, Mr. Self and Mr. May from the town both felt that staff had done as far as they could go to identify the issues, and that additional staff meetings would not make any further ground or progress. And so the second step is a joint meeting of the 3 governing bodies, which will take place tomorrow. And then at that meeting, in the introductory comments, I plan to present the county's position as I read earlier today, unless the board wants this to be changed at this point. And then obviously the town will present their position, which I am going to guess is very similar to what they've said the last 2 meetings. And then we'll hear the proposal from the city. But my thought would be that if the city's proposal does not get us to where we want to be on our issues, then we would take a vote. And Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we would take a vote to say either one, okay, yeah, we agree with the city, either we want to delay this longer, we want to give you 6 months, 9 months, whatever, or we vote and say, no, we don't think you've reached where we are, and our next step would then be to turn this over to a mediator. And that would be, in my opinion, one of the 2 outcomes at tomorrow's meeting.
Okay, so in theory, then, this can still move forward with the decommissioning of the power plant in separate context of anything that we'll be doing tomorrow.
We could, as far as the town's position on their lawsuit, they could say, yeah, we don't think this is going to get where we want to be, so we want to get to mediation. So once that's done, we can get to the lawsuit, and they can get their issues settled. I don't think that precludes the city from taking any of these steps that the city wants to, but it may be that the town says, hey, we don't think you're getting where we want to be. We want to get to that lawsuit, so we're going to go to mediation and move on.
Okay. I follow the process, I guess. My biggest concern basically is what is laid in front of us by the city, and for that to be on a parallel track in and of separate than anything that we're going to be able to do in this entire process. That concerns me, and I don't know what standing we have in it because we're not. I don't think we have any standing in other than.
And I'll address that. Certainly, we can certainly examine the issues that Commissioner Davis has talked about. But what I think is what you're talking about is where the city's going from here. And I think tomorrow the key is this is your opportunity as 5 board members sitting at the table with the 5 council members from the city of Vero Beach and the 5 council members from the town to really have this dialogue. So this isn't really designed to be a, well, let me ask Chef Wright something, or let me come back and ask Floyd Self something. This is your opportunity to have that dialogue with your fellow elected officials from the city of Vero Beach and the town and say, look, guys, we're concerned about all these issues. Certainly as part of this discussion, we hope that you not rush into this. I think you need to take some time, really consider it, give us an opportunity to think, and we can certainly allow the governmental coordination process to continue, move on to intermediation or the like, but certainly we want a seat at the table or a discussion to talk about this before you rush in to make a final decision. And that's going to be your open dialogue with each other.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Zork?
The rates are kind of what's on discussion at the moment. The other thing you have to look at, and now that the sale's on the back burner, the other consequences that goes with that, with the city stating that it's sort of on the back burner. If you're a commercial user, or you're a piper, or you're the school district, and you're in the City of Vero Beach grid, City of Vero Beach doesn't have any energy conservation programs similar to what Florida Power Light has. When a school, and I think it was East Florida University up in Brevard County, put in new chiller systems, FP&L rebated them back a few $100,000 of the cost of the project to help both reduce the cost of the project and that reduces their consumption of power. City of Vero Beach has electric impact fees. I know we put the new lights on the quad field out at this Dodgertown. I think our share of impact fees, Mike, you probably know, was $60,000 or $80,000, and that's over and above paying the premium rates that you're paying. On the energy conservation measures, Florida Power and Light has a host of items that residential customers can get incentives and rebates and cost sharing. So we're not just losing on the rates, we're losing in so many other areas in the process. So even if we got the same rates, there's still, if you look at what our business community could benefit from, if they had Florida Power Line as a power provider, they could cost share a lot of energy conservation measures and enhancements, both for the school district, for private enterprise, and for the individual citizen. And those programs don't exist at all with the City of Vero Beach Electric. Or if they do, I think they're of small scale. I know they do energy audits and some things like that, but they don't fork over any money like the partnership programs for Florida Power and Light the private producers do.
Commissioner Flores?
This is one of the things that I just don't know, so if anybody knows about it, I'd appreciate some better information. I thought that with the FP&L contract, that they were requiring the City of Vero Beach Electric Plant to stay around for at least 2 or 3 years because they needed that peak power. And it would take some amount of time, I thought about 3 years, to improve the transmission system enough so that they could get their power from other sources through to the city. And in some of the backup documents, it says, there's one line that says, Vero shall obtain network transmission service from FP&L for peaking capacity from the delivery point to the load. I would think that that's addressing sort of the point that I'm talking about. So, and I'm also going to guess that the City of Vero Beach, and it's just a guess, the City of Vero Beach is going to have to pay for this transmission upgrade. Has anybody done any of the calculations to see, one, how long that'll actually take the City of Vero Beach to do, two, how much that is going to cost the City of Vero Beach, and three, I would guess or anticipate there'd be some other charges from the FP&L to the City of Vero Beach for the through transmission of that power through their system. And has any number been attached to that cost? So, I mean, it just seems like that's a significant issue that I haven't seen quite enough detail on.
And that was one of the concerns, Commissioner Solari, is that the whole transmission upgrade has not been identified. I think you're correct. FP&L did have a several-year period, and I want to say like $7 million or more as part of the purchase that they were going to put.
Yeah, I remember 12, but I could be wrong there.
But a substantial amount of cost to upgrade this transmission, and that is not identified in this proposal, so that is a concern.
How could the city really go forward without having the details of that information?
I would think that would be a very good question to ask the mayor tomorrow.
Okay.
Any other comments, gentlemen? Let me just reiterate, tomorrow morning's opening talk, I will again present our position, and I'll read it one more time, and just like a consensus from the board that that's still our position. And one is the Board of County Commissioners believes that the number one priority is the full and complete sale of the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility, FP&L, and that this is the best solution for all of the residents of Indian River County, whether they're in the town, the city, or unincorporated county. In the event the sale cannot be completed, Then we are asking for one, rates substantially similar to those of Florida Power and Light, a cessation of the subsidy of the City of Vero Beach General Fund by the City of Vero Beach Electric Utility, and the formation of a utility authority that is fairly and proportionally represents the geographic makeup of the electric utility customer base. Is it the consensus of the board that that's still our position? Okay. I'd like to, if anyone from the public would like to make a comment, we'll open up to public comment. I would ask if your comments can be strictly limited to the City of Vero Beach rate reduction proposal. I think we've heard the general issues quite a bit. I don't want to reiterate all that. I think we know what the issues are. But if anyone has comments specific to the city's rate reduction efforts that were proposed last Tuesday, we can go ahead and take those comments. We don't have a podium, but if you would stand and give your name and address for the record, and then just speak in a somewhat loud voice, we should.
Actually,
Sit right there.
No, that's fine. We'll pick up over there.
Okay, great. He's right below the
Actually, this microphone is off.
Okay, well, thank you. My name is Scott Stradley, and my address is 1797 14th Avenue. And I am the chairman of the Utility Commission for the city of Vero Beach. And on the 24th, October 24th, Mr. Wright came to our Utility Commission and went into his proposed contract in detail, which raised a lot of questions, a lot of the issues that you've already touched on today, and there's a few others that I think, questions that I have, that I expressed to City Council at the meeting that night. And I'd like to kind of go over some of these things with you because there are concerns that I have. First of all, I appreciate the fact that the County Commission represents all the county residents, those that are city taxpayers as well as people that are outside of the city. So I know I'm in Commissioner Zork's district, and so you all aren't just representing the people outside, the outside ratepayers against the inside ratepayers. You're representing all of the citizens of the county, and I appreciate that, and that's your perspective. One of the things that I expressed to the council is that this $7 million savings a year is very enticing. But we have had a history of making bad long-term decisions for short-term benefits at the City of Vero Beach. So I want to make sure, in my job as a utility chairman and advisor to the City Council, that we go through and we try to make the best decision possible. The total savings under this contract would be $74 million a year if we can implement the change in 2015. This is an annual savings of only $5 million a year. That's not an insignificant amount. It's a little less than the transfer that you referred to earlier. But this savings assumes that there's no cost to upgrading the transmission lines. And Mr. Slaughter is correct. When Florida Power and Light was looking into this, they said there's a cost for it. So I believe that's a very shaky assumption. So we need to look at what the total cost of this contract is. What are we giving up for the $7 million per year? First of all, we're going to purchase $54 million of peaking capacity to replace the power plant. The power plant barely runs now, but we have to have it for the very, very cold days that we get once every 10 years, and perhaps a very, very exceptionally hot summer day that we would have to run the plant in order to generate some additional electricity that we would need. Once we hit these upgrades in place under this contract, then we would retire the plant. That would save us about $4 million a year. The information Mr. Wright gave us is that's going to be about a break-even compared to purchasing this power to replace that, the capacity and the power to replace that. However, he's not given us any detail on that information. I've requested it. I requested from the city manager and the utility director the information that they forwarded to Mr. Wright as he went into the negotiations. I didn't ask him to produce anything else, but just let me have a copy of what they already. He must have had something to go make this decision. So they have yet to give that to me, forward that to me. So I question what about a break-even means. Secondly, this fundamentally changes our contract with OUC from just a demand contract to a take-or-pay contract. Our other contracts with the FMPA are take-or-pay. That means we either use the power or we pay for it. We're increasing the take-or-pay in this to 85 megawatts. Again, the only information I have, so that means every day we're going to be buying a minimum of 85 megawatts from OUC. The only information that I've been able to receive is from the city manager at the meeting, and it was that our average daily usage is 93 megawatts. 93 is pretty close to 85. I would question that we're using 85 today in this beautiful day that we have outside. So under this new contract, we would be paying for power that we wouldn't use any time our usage was above the FMPA, which told us about 41. We're going to pay for another 85, whether we use it or not. So I've also requested the information that was given to Mr. Wright as he went in to negotiate the take-or-pay of what our actual daily usage was, because you have to have that information in order to negotiate a take-or-pay. I can't imagine someone entering into negotiation absent that information of what our actual daily usage is. I have yet to receive that. One of the most troubling things under this is it's Mr. Wright's fourth point. The OUC is given a one-time option to terminate this power purchase agreement. And that's in the year 2020, they have to give us 2 years notice, and then they've agreed to renegotiate things in good faith. But this termination option will be without penalty. Currently, there's a much maligned exit penalty that we have in the current contract of between $20 and $50 million. $20 million minimum up to $50 million. In theory, that protects the city of Vero Beach from the OUC getting out of this long-term contract early because prices went up. We've experienced a market where price of power went down, so we're the one that's looking to get out. We're the one that in the Florida Power and Light negotiation was going to pay them $20 million to let us out of this contract, along with another $34 million in the other contracts. But that goes away. So in my mind, in my opinion, the only reason the OUC would exit this contract in 2020 is if power is up. And power is more expensive and they can sell it someplace else. So then they're going to be able to get out of this contract with no penalty, force Vero Beach to go out into what I presumably is a more expensive market and reacquire this power that they're no longer selling us. But Vero Beach doesn't have an option to get out without penalty at any point in time. It's just a one-way option. I find that very troubling, very, very troubling. They're also, the OUC, and Mr. O'Brien mentioned this, they have a one-time option to purchase the St. Lucie project. Well, actually, it's not to acquire the St. Lucie project. It's not to purchase, and let's maybe make that distinction very clear. It's an assumption. We're still obligated to take the power from St. Lucie. OUC would take the power from us. OUC would pay the City of Vero Beach. The City of Vero Beach would pay the FMPA. The FMPA would pay Florida Power and Light. Everybody in that transaction except the City of Vero Beach would get a little cut, but be that as it may. What that does is it keeps us in the utility business. It keeps us having to be a utility with ratepayers, according to Mr. Wright, until the turn of the next century. And the reason this is true is because under the agreement that we made with OUC, they were going to acquire all of our entitlement projects. And we were going to step away from them, and they were going to own them, they were going to own the liabilities, and their ratepayers were going to be the support for them. The contract with OUC that was part of the Florida Power and Light deal fell apart because the FNPA bond council went to the OUC bond council and said the FNPA bonds have to have priority over the OUC bonds. Nobody really, in all the discussions that went back and forth with our attorneys, nobody really envisioned this being possible. OUC is a better credit risk. OUC actually owns the plants, but FNPA insisted that OUC's bonds be subject to, or come second, have be like a second mortgage to the FNPA bonds, really on the same plants with respect to Stanton. OUC was unwilling to do that. Their bond counsel said, no, we can't do that. Our bonds that we issued have to have priority. They have to be our first mortgage. So this is not a purchase of our interest. This is only an assumption. The Vero Beach ratepayers are here to backstop this contract. And so there has to be City of Vero Beach utility ratepayers until the St. Lucie plant is fully decommissioned sometime after 2100. Further, according to the way Mr. Wright negotiated it, about 40% of the useful life of this plant has the City of Vero Beach has gotten the power. No, I'm sorry, 60%. 40% of the power is going to go to OUC. So if there's any overages in the decommissioning costs, which right now they say it's fully funded, but if there is any overage, 60% of that overage will come back to the City of Vero Beach ratepayers, and they will have to pay it in 2100, 21.5. So, and also if there's ever a disaster there or any problems, as there were on the West Coast, the City of Vero Beach ratepayers are on the hook to make that up as well. So there has to be City of Vero Beach ratepayers until all these contracts are resolved and the St. Lucie power plant, St. Lucie nuclear plant is fully decommissioned. This will keep the City of Vero Beach in the municipal business until, as we said, until after 2100. Interestingly, this option survives the termination of this power contract with OUC. So OUC can, in 2020, terminate the agreement, but they still have the option to buy or to acquire St. Lucie. And really what that does, even if they never acquire it, we can't ever sell it because it's subject to an option. And we still have an opportunity to go forward under the homestead model and sell our power entitlements to other qualified utilities. They would not presumably have the problem of OUC as also being a generating utility and having generating bonds in the same plants that we're trying to get them to buy, and that convoluted problem. So we still have the homestead option, the homestead model, to find other municipalities to take our entitlements. But once our the one entitlement that's really not multi-million dollars underwater is subject to an option, it's unmarketable. Bartow's not going to take St. Lucie knowing that at any point in time OUC can take it away from them. So the effect of this one-time option to acquire St. Lucie, even if they never acquire it, I believe, in my opinion, will be to keep the City of Vero Beach in the municipal, as a municipal utility until the turn of the next century. Further, the OUC retains our natural gas rights. That's the only contract we have that has any positive value. Yes, they have it until, under the terms of the current contract, till 2029, but at that point in time it does come back to us. And that was a large part of what we negotiated with OUC to take us out. Of course, that option is no longer on the table because OUC's pulled out for the reasons we discussed. So all of these things, a great many unknowns that we don't know about this. The hope that we're going to get $7 million a year savings, maybe on average 5 years, $5 million. But if OUC exercises the option in 2020, it cuts 9 years of the proposed savings off the table. So these are the things that I shared. I've expanded a little bit on what I shared with the City Council, and I will be continuing to share with the City Council and continuing to look into and probe with on the Utility Commission. So I think that one final point, if this contract is executed, well, let me step back. If the Shores is successful in the lawsuit, I believe that there's going to have to be some compensation for the sunk cost the City of Vero Beach has put into the utility business. Now, what that is or who's going to make it, I don't know. The amount, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe the jury will say there is no sunk cost. However, if this contract is executed, the sunk costs are going to increase significantly. And if there is any compensation for the City of Vero Beach cost, it's going to go up quite a bit. So happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Zork?
Hi, thanks for your information, Scott. On the take or pay, that's an interesting scenario. So if we're not consuming the 54 megawatts that either you take it or we're going to charge you for it anyway, has anybody figured out per megawatt what value that would have on a bill if we're off by, let's say, 1 month we're off 3 megawatts? What does that equate to? And I'm picturing a third line on the bill where you've got your bill, then you got your fuel adjustment charge. Are you now going to have a third line that's the take or pay reconciliation number that we guaranteed to buy it, but we didn't buy it, so we had to pay for it, and we didn't use it, so we're just going to spread that around all the ratepayers?
It's like a buffet mentality, isn't it? Basically, you pay for the buffet whether you eat it or not, you still got to pay the same amount.
Right.
So it wouldn't be a buffet charge.
No, but there'd be, or a way to quantify 1 megawatt of using the values that are in here. If we're off by 1, what you might have saved, you may give up in a 2-month period if you're off just 1 megawatt on the consumption side.
Well, it'll be 1% per $1 million, approximately 1% per $1 million. In terms, I don't know exactly what the price would be. It's a variable price,
Right.
And it's the pricing is complicated because we have to pay for the capacity.
Right.
We pay for the capacity to run I think 100 extra megawatts, or 95 megawatts this year, whether we need it or not. We pay for that capacity for the 1 day a year when it's really cold, everybody's running their heater, and we use that much electricity. So we pay that, and that's where we're getting the savings, the proposed savings of this contract, is they're lowering that capacity charge. They're not changing the actual power charge, what they're charging us for electricity under this contract. That's what, when we thought this contract was going to be renegotiated, we thought it was going to be renegotiated a la the Lake Worth contract, which they're buying their electricity at a much lower price.
Right.
It's not that. We're still paying the same price for electricity. We're paying less for the capacity that we reserve every day of the year. So we have basically a take or pay on the capacity. We don't need the electricity today. January 31st, if it's 32 degrees, we're going to need that electricity. So OUC's agreed to save that electricity for us. They promised to have that electricity for us on January 31st when we have a hard freeze. And they have that electricity for us today when it's 75 degrees outside and we have to pay for it today. And that's the reality of utilities. That's just the way utilities work. We have to have the capacity. Otherwise, we'd be risking brownouts and those sort of things. So that's not a bad thing. The pricing in the old OUC contract, that's something that's very questionable, but you can't question the fact that we have to pay for the capacity. But in terms of this take or pay, that's new. It's not just the capacity. That's already covered by the capacity. But it's power that we're guaranteeing them that we will buy every day, whether we need it or not. And I don't know what the per megawatt hour on that. I've seen it at times over the last few years at $85 a megawatt hour. or a kilowatt. And I've seen it, this year it's come down, which is how the city has been able to lower the rates. We've done nothing in the way we've changed our operation. What's happened is our power costs have come in less than what was budgeted, and therefore we had surplus more revenue and lower costs, so we were able to do that and to lower our rates. So all of the proposed rate reductions that we've had so far this year have just been a cost factor. There haven't been any operational changes.
And last question, obviously, if outside customers like the Shores or other outside customers got out and you committed to the 54, then you're just increasing that.
Actually, it's 84.
Or
85.
85. It's 85. 54 is what we have to do to replace
right, okay, I'm on
the power plant.
Right. So if you have outside customers leave through whatever, then you'd be guaranteed to buy more power than you would need. You'd be bound by it, even though some customers may have went somewhere else.
Approximately amount of power that we're committing to buy is about 60%. We're increasing our entitlements by about 60%, our take or pay. Currently, we're obligated to buy power that covers about 40% of our needs, which has led, and it is, as the chairman mentioned, it is the most expensive power.
Right.
And so currently under the OUC contract, we don't have to buy any additional power from them.
Thanks.
Commissioner Flory?
Yeah, Scott, again, this is one of the good reasons why I'm glad we're not in the electric business, because we come here without the skill set to really deal with it. So bear with me as I go through this, because it can't be as sort of as simple as I think it might be. You said that we're increasing the take and pay from the OUC to 85 megawatts.
From 0 to 85.
Right. And that we have an average of 93.
Yes.
Okay, so we would have had to have gotten an average by taking the amounts we used on different days and then dividing them by that many days, right?
Correct. 365, presumably.
Okay, so you have the 365 days in a year. So is anybody simply taking the usage of the city of Vero Beach for the last 365 days or some 365-day period and then put in the number and come up with how much we would have been charged for each day for power we didn't use?
That analysis, to the best of my knowledge, has not been done.
Well, wouldn't that be something that as simple as possible?
Well, as I said, I cannot imagine a negotiation of a take or pay being done absent that information. So I requested with the city manager and the utility director on Friday that they forward me the information that they had forwarded Mr. Wright. And I'm hoping it's a 3 to 5 year number, not just 1 year number. But like I say, I cannot imagine, and maybe it's just a failure of my imagination, but I would never go into a negotiation to do a take or pay based on an average number. I would want to know what the actual daily number is.
But the way I'm explaining it makes sense to you?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. It is that simple.
I mean, okay, because that would be like the first thing I'd do before I'd even consider it.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I mean, this is the wonderful thing about spreadsheets. I mean, you just take a couple hours to put in all the numbers and then do a copy, and it shows up, and you could actually discuss what you want to talk about.
And we could get into, I mean, we could make it complicated and talk about standard deviations
No, I mean, this is
and all
simple
this
this
stuff.
way. I mean, it's
Yeah,
simple.
no.
Okay, I mean, it's absolutely beyond me that they wouldn't have this number prior to starting a conversation about this.
I don't know that they don't have this number. I do know that as of 3 o'clock today, when I left, getting here late, and I apologize for that, I did not have a copy of this number that I can only, again, presume, because it would be, well, I'm not going to use the...
Let me ask a couple other things. Let's say that, with this type of weather we have and everything, and the ups and downs, it would seem that we'd have a lot of days where we may use 70 or 75 megawatts.
Yes.
And so that would be a number, and I'm just going to guess maybe a large number. Do I understand it correctly that then somebody around the city of Vero Beach will have to pay for that?
All the ratepayers will pay for that.
Okay, so that'll just be divided up, and all the ratepayers will have to pay that
Yes.
on top of everything else, which would then just on their average increase how much they pay for 1,000 kilowatts.
Yes.
Okay, so again, you'd have, I would have thought that the city council members would have had those numbers so that they could maybe basically fulfill their fiduciary duty to their citizens and customers.
Some city council members have requested them. However, the city council has voted to not provide guidance to our attorney in terms of this negotiation, as they have also not to guide the attorney into the negotiation with the Shores and the county.
Okay, for me, guidance is one thing, and I certainly wouldn't give guidance in something like this because it's clearly too complicated for any elected official in any River County. But I would certainly think that ask the questions of, giving me basic good information.
Well, again, I don't think what I asked for on Friday was complicated. I don't think I asked for something that needed to be created. I asked for something that I presumed had to exist in order to negotiate this number.
And I would say the same thing. I mean, I would not even have to presume that it would have to exist. It's more difficult to even comprehend that you'd get this far in the conversation without it existing.
Well, absent seeing it, I can only presume that it exists.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Stradick. Anyone else that wishes to speak specifically to the rate reduction proposal?
Yeah. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Harry Howell, 765 Broadway Street, Vero Beach, Florida, 32960. My job's going to be very easy here today. I had a bunch of notes that you all touched on. I was glad to hear that you're in agreement with what my notes were going to say with regard to this deal. It sounds like it's barely stitched together, really. It's not, I don't think something that should be considered. And some of the stuff that Scott was mentioning to me brought to light the fact that there's a scenario where we could have OUC buying from City of Vero Beach to pay FMPA, which all goes back to FP&L anyway. So if I'm elected for City Council, I'm not going to stop short of a sale to FP&L, because I think anything shy of that, Vero Beach loses. And the other thing that you touched on, but maybe not in great detail, is the decommissioning of the power plant, which is going to be expensive. I don't have a number, but we know it's going to be a lot. And there are retirement costs, there are the transfer improvements, there are possibly, I don't know, possibly some environmental impacts that would have to be taken care of. So I don't want anybody to forget that this was all part of the FP&L deal from the beginning. So we're taking a step in the wrong direction. This OUC deal, I think, would just further entangle us, make things more complicated, and it's not an option. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
If you don't mind, I just thought I would check my email, and I did, and I got a response from the city manager. And it says, Scott, Chef will respond to all the questions since they're tied together. I had several other questions beyond the 85 megawatts. But just a quick response, the 85 megawatts is a floor number for the capacity charge, not that we buy 85 megawatts. Now, I'm reacting now to this email. That doesn't make any sense to me because we're already paying for the capacity. And that's what we're getting a discount on, the $7 million. Discount is on the capacity. We're already buying all the capacity we need from OUC with our $54 million that we produce here. And that $54 million 54 megawatts that we produce here comes under a different section of this agreement. So this answer from the city manager, unfortunately, doesn't make sense because he says not that we buy 85 megawatts. Well, that's not what a take means in that document. So I'm looking forward to finding this information out, and all this information that I'm getting is shared with the entire Utility Commission and with the City Council.
So Scott, what you're saying is it's not just the elected officials who don't understand the electric business.
I'm not going to say that,
Okay.
Mr. Solari. I'm saying that I don't quite understand this email.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Scott, we knew you were running late, and I was willing to stretch things out to accommodate you, but Mr. Wilson said, no, just go ahead without him. So I want you to know I'm sticking up for you, Scott. Yes, sir.
You write for Inside Hero, right? Same facts, yeah.
Well, at least the two of you understand each other.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Charlie Wilson, 2134 18th Avenue in Vero Beach. I'd like to take just a second to try and defend for a moment the citizens of Vero Beach. We keep talking about Vero Beach and Vero Beach doing this and Vero Beach doing that. The citizens of Vero Beach haven't done any of those things. It is the government of the city of Vero Beach and different councils that have been elected by the city of Vero Beach, oftentimes without being completely honest about their positions on especially on the electric issue. So I want to defend for a moment, as we know, it's the citizens who you represent, and I may not represent very many of them. I don't know. We'll see pretty soon. I know I represent one, and but I do want to point out a couple of things on this issue. And first of all, it is the citizens of Vero Beach. The citizens of Vero Beach are not these. We talk about numbers and FMPA and everything, but we keep forgetting about the people out there that are paying these rates. And I would not be surprised not only to see the city of Vero Beach sued by Indian River Shores or sued by the county, but to be sued by a class action of its own ratepayers. And it won't be then a case of the city of Vero Beach government, elected officials particularly, saying that they're being attacked by the outside, because the same people that are inside the city, the ratepayers within inside the city, are just as unhappy as those outside of the city. And some of you represent those people, two of you particularly, represent the city of Vero Beach. One of the things that people may not understand, because there's a lot of confusion out there, and that's what's happened during the elections. They said it was a done deal. Go ahead, we can change elections. It was a done deal. Nothing can happen to it. It took them 6 months to get from a done deal to a dead deal. Now, but you can remember what some of the you have to remember what they're saying, and there's a couple of things you need to watch out for tomorrow. If I could just warn you a little bit. Number one is you may not remember, and I'm not picking on anybody because I think Chef Wright is a great attorney, and he's certainly very knowledgeable. But remember that Chef Wright was approved by FMPA. That we had another attorney that the FMPA refused to negotiate with any longer. And so then we picked Chef Wright. So now Chef Wright, representing this new council, and I want you to know that all of these negotiations that we're talking about, every single one of them took place in secret. There was no observation of these negotiations, and I'm not sure that there's any record. Now, someone more cynical than I, if there is someone more cynical than I, but if I were a cynical man, I would probably say to myself, let's see. 2013, FP&L made an offer. 2013, after 2 or 3 years of negotiations, FMPA shot them a number of $52 million. After several months of consideration, FP&L called their bluff and said, okay, we'll pay it. All of a sudden, FMPA said, oh my God, now what do we do? So on March the 5th of 2014, the City Council votes to table the offer. That gives the FMPA 30 days. The FMPA then goes to OUC and says, hey, look, guys, I'll make you a deal. You screw up this sale, you back out of this sale, in another 3 or 4 months, we'll send our attorney that we're going to be able to negotiate with you a better deal. So what have we got? The 4 parts that we have to watch out for is, number 1, permanently higher rates. In order to go with this, we are identifying that we have permanently higher rates. The second is that we will be in business for 100 years. Can you imagine taking a Verizon contract and you get a reduction for the first 3 years, but you have to keep the same phone for the other 97? So we keep talking about being in long contracts, but we are being suggested that we take a contract for 100 years. No one in this room will still be alive when this goes. Thirdly, is it continues the subsidies. And the subsidy is not $4.5 million, it's 7 or 8, because they're also passing on partial cost of different employees. So just since 2008, when we first started talking about this, that's 6 years times $7 million. Is that 56 million? 60% of that being paid by outside ratepayers. So just since 2008, the city of Indian River Shores and the county have paid the city of Vero Beach $40 million? And we want to do that for 100 years. That's acceptable. So lastly, it's a reduction in assets. Now, what Scott had mentioned to you is what it means is that we can no longer sell because we don't have control of the assets. Didn't we learn anything in where we are right now? So I want to do two things when y'all are up there tomorrow. I'd like to ask you to think of two things. One is I'd like you to think of the city as people and not just government to government. And the second is, depending on the elections, I can tell you what my intention is. My intention is I think it's in the best interest of the city of Vero Beach ratepayers and residents to work with Indian River Shores and the county to find a solution with FMPA. That's not a negotiated solution. One of the things we have learned, we will never have a negotiated solution with FMPA. Never, ever, ever. So as a result, the only thing we can do is all band together and attempt to change the circumstances of the sale. Because there is no substitute for getting out of the electric business. It is no longer about rates. What we have now determined is you could cut the rates in half, and it doesn't make any difference. Because you cannot trust future governance either through the City Council or through the City Council into the agreements that we made with the FMPA and another agreement that we're thinking about with OUC. So, number one is it is in the best interest of the citizens of Vero Beach. You are there to represent your constituents. I'm here to represent what little constituency I have. But that is, I believe, is in the best interest of the citizens of Vero Beach to work with the county and to work with Indian River Shores. And I am hopeful that you will, if you have your meeting tomorrow and you reach impasse, which I suspect will happen, that you at least save yourself an opportunity to have another meeting, not 6 months later, but 2 weeks later. Because if the citizens of Vero Beach know what's coming, increase in taxes of 75%, increase in rates of 30%, and this is suspiciously a week before the election. How convenient that this happens. That you wait that extra 2 weeks to see if the governance of the city of Vero Beach changes. Because if the people are smart enough to realize they have been duped, double-crossed, then we will be there to be able to work with you to find the solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
One
Commissioner
question.
York?
Just an additional piece of information when you had kind of looked at Commissioner Solari and myself. We have the bulk of the inside and outside customers, but surprisingly enough, because of the far-reaching footprint of City of Vero Beach Electric, even Commissioner Davis, who primarily is from Fellsmere, some of his territory on the 60 corridor and the 74th Avenue area, where his territory begins, he has customers in it. Commissioner Flesher from Sebastian, who comes down into the Gifford community, we all have either inside and outside, or that just shows how much larger the footprint is than the city of Vero Beach.
Well,
because it goes a lot of different directions.
That's right. And especially, remember, they're ratepayers. And it's not the taxpayer of the Vero Beach that owns the utility. It's the ratepayers. The city of Vero Beach hasn't spent a nickel, not one single dime of tax money on the utility. It all belongs to ratepayers. And it's going to be interesting when this suit comes up as to what happens to that money. Does it go to the city, or is it divided among the ratepayers? Because it could very well be. If I were them, I wouldn't push this matter. This could be the actual destruction of the city, especially since we've been given a bill for $46 million from FMPA that we can't pay. And that's going to have to be. Remember, Dick Winger said he's never going to let you go. Dick Winger said he will not support anything that allows the shores of the county to be able to leave Vero Electric.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mark?
This is going to be real quick. Mark Muture, 617 Indian Lilac Road in the city. I feel the same way that Scott did in his first point, but his first point was 20 minutes before his last point, so maybe you forgot it. And that is, the city of Vero Beach has done a terrible job in terms of getting into long-term contracts for the while looking for short-term gains. Did that with FMP savings. Did that with getting into FMPA, which basically is forever. Did that with OUC in a 20-year, $2 billion purportedly contract, and they're about to do it again. The only other thing I'd like to say is in response to Peter's initial comment about the St. Lucie nuclear plant, I wouldn't hit that too hard because right now, if we don't buy from St. Lucie, we would have to buy that power from OUC, and the power from OUC is cheaper than the St. Lucie power. That could shift at some point.
I don't think so, Marty. I think that St. Lucie's the lowest, and that's part of
It's the lowest of the three entitlements.
Right, and
but
so they're
it's not,
taking that power regardless. That's their first skim.
Right, and if that, let's say we're paying $75 for OUC, and Scott, correct me if you got the exact numbers. Or let's say we're paying $75 from St. Lucie, and the reason we're paying so much is because FMPA marks it up. Let's say we're paying $65 from OUC, not on our Stanton 1 and Stanton 2 entitlements, but our excess power purchases that we negotiated in 2009. I believe that's in the area of $65. That's not right, Scott? I think the OEC power is cheaper than the St. Lucie nuclear. But again, that could change. So I wouldn't hit that too hard.
Absent the capacity charge, yes. But at long range, we have to look at, these are long-range contracts.
Right. I'm just saying the marginal cost of power, if we were to lose St. Lucie, we'd be buying from OEC cheaper.
But OUC won't take it from us. They won't exercise the option if the power cost is more expensive than what they're producing. They'll only exercise the option when and if the power becomes less expensive than what they're producing. At least that's what a rational actor would do.
Or they may politically just want to improve their mix. Shep told me that OEC told him, we want us some new.
Well, yeah, Mark, if what you said is true, that the OUC power is cheaper than St. Lucie, why are we higher than FPL rates? I mean, it can't be. I mean,
Because
OUC is a big investor in the coal
high. Plus, it's not only the cost of our fuel, we've got a high cost operation. Our bills are divided into two parts. The amount we pay for power, which is the second part, but the first part is the amount it takes to get the power to us, including all the overhead. And that's high as well.
Okay.
Maybe somebody can explain that better than I can. Well, Glenn's standing up.
Need to be out of the electric business.
That's right. That's the overall thing, is we have no business being out of the electric business.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glenn Heron. I live at 1964 Gray Falcon Circle in Vero Beach. And with respect to the OUC contract, I thought it was interesting to read the letter from the Shores here, and it says, the first, with respect, and it's in paragraph 4, paragraph 4, essentially with respect to the OUC contract, is a dangerous assumption to make when one considers that Vero Beach's costs under the FMPA contracts are likely to increase. Remember that 40% of the power that the city of Vero Beach buys comes from the FMPA. So the OUC contract is kind of like this. It's like, okay, people, look over here, look at the OUC contract, and let's not look at the FMPA, which is a significant source of our problems. They go on to say in paragraph 6, it is our hope that the city will now put similar efforts toward negotiating with the FMPA. Notice that I didn't mention the OUC, but with the FMPA to finalize a sale. We wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation. We wouldn't be having this conversation for the last 2 years if the FMPA were willing to negotiate a settlement to the city of Vero Beach getting out. And I believe that we have a city council that is not putting any effort into doing that. Certainly there's a 3-person majority that's not doing that. There are certainly 2 that would like to very much do that. But that's really where our problem is. So this OUC contract is, look over here, we can get your rates down, but at the very best, your rates are going to be 17% higher than FP&L. And I believe it is the mission of the county and the shores to exit the city of Vero Beach electric system altogether. Because, as some speakers have said, it's kind of hard to trust them after years and years of not ever having any competitiveness with FP&L. This is not something new. They haven't been competitive with FP&L for decades. So, and there was a great point raised about the FMPA itself. Now, this is my concept, and I've said this for a number of years. We have these long-term contracts with the FMPA, Stanton 1, Stanton 2, and St. Lucie. If the FMPA would simply sell those underlying assets to any utility, anyone, just sell them outside of the FMPA, take the proceeds, pay off the debt, and basically retire our interest in the FMPA. But they don't do that. What they say is, you can, and I think Scott said it, the only place you can sell your FMPA entitlement interests are to another muni. Possibly another muni who has no interest in the power. They've already got all the power they need. So if your market is so limited to sell your FMPA entitlements, then how are you going to get out? And so that's what I'm suggesting is that this doesn't harm other FMPA members, this doesn't harm FMPA bondholders, it simply reduces the size of the FMPA. Period. No harm, no foul to anybody. What's so wrong with that concept? And so, as noted in this letter from the shores to, I believe this is to the city, that why don't they negotiate with the FMPA? We had a deal back in 2014. I think it was $52 million was going to pay us to get out. I think FP&L was going to pay half of that, and the other ratepayers were going to pay the other half of it for $26 million. That's 1 year of savings. We could have been out in 1 year. But instead we've got this other proposal with the OUC contract saying, look over here, we can stay in this business and we'll have rates 17% higher than FP&L. Or let's deal with the real problem. Let's go deal with the FMPA, and I believe that's the nature of what you guys are trying to do, is that why would you want to be in business with the city of Vero Beach if they're not going to negotiate with somebody who believes, and this is the FMPA, that believes that you should be in a contract until the 22nd century, another 100 years? How absurd is it that we could have positions that are that long? Who buys a house that you could never sell for 100 years? Who buys stock that you could never sell for 100 years? Or any business transaction? Show me where it's fair that we are in these contracts for eternity. That's the real fight that we have to have, not this OUC thing.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Gordon?
Glenn, I've noticed is that at the FMPA meetings how aggressively and quickly they went to represent FMPA interest in the closing of the Crystal River nuke plant that had the problem, and they've bragged on how well they quickly did handshake settlement agreements for $50 to $75 million for the members, and they seem to do cartwheels to make that deal happen, but they can't even push the cart out of the way to help on this deal. And I don't know enough of the difference between the two. I don't know where they paid a fee to be the negotiator and that motivated them to some degree, but they were going to get a chunk of money. It seems like in this deal too, that should have been a motivator. At least their members were going to be made whole in some fashion. But do you know anything about why FMPA was so willing to just go work round the clock and aggressively to work out the settlement on the Crystal River nuke plant?
The answer to that, the specifics on that, I have no idea, Commissioner Zork, but it does raise an interesting point about the willingness of the FMPA to work, and I don't know why. I mean, this concept that I've raised, and I don't think I could be clearer. This in no way harms FMPA members or bondholders. Simply just, like you said, in these Crystal River things, get rid of the assets, sell them outside of your system.
They quantified them cashing everybody out, and they're looking at getting payments, it sounds like, within the next 60 or 90 days. And I think the whole process seems like took less than a year, or about a year maybe.
Right.
That seems like that would have been a little hard. You're trying to judge each member's interest damage value and how much they were going to get. It seems a little more complicated than figuring out our part. But,
Well, Commissioner, you may be right. The fair market value of these assets may be underwater. I don't know.
Dylan?
I was just going to say, I know we've got tomorrow's meeting, which is going to be more focused probably on the OUC contract and some of the rate reduction issues. I know we talked about a lot about the FMP and everything. I just wasn't sure if that's where we wanted to go with this meeting. That was just a question to you, Chair.
it was just a convenience question. since
Well,
he was
I was
up.
just making the point that I believe it's a distraction from the real issue, which is we all realize that selling to FP&L is the name of the game. That is our ultimate solution. I think everybody in the room even agrees with that. There are people even in the city council who even say that. Whether they actually are going to execute on those issues is quite another matter.
Thank you, Ron. Does anyone else wishes to speak?
I just wanted,
One last thing, Scott?
last thing, I just wanted to say that I always try to give accurate advice and accurate information. And according to these emails that I've just been getting, it may not be a take or pay for more retail electricity. It may only be an increase, a take on the capacity, which again, as I said before, doesn't make sense because we already have all the capacity we need. But I just want to put that caveat out there. I'm going to find out exactly what's going on. It's certainly not clear in the memo. It wasn't clear in the Utility Commission meeting, nor at the City Council meeting, nor have at any point in time prior to, in the middle of this meeting, have my comments, which I've made before, been questioned or challenged. So, anyways, I just that there may be a correction coming.